Called to order the January 24th, 2024 meeting of the Danville-Boyle County Planning and Zoning Commission. And we'll ask Jim Boyd to do our invocation.
Heavenly Father, thank you for all the blessings you've shown on us. Be with us today as we meet to make decisions for our city and our county. Be with our firefighters and military and police and all the public servants as they go about doing the business of the city and county. We ask your blessings on this meeting today and thank you for the rain. Amen.
Amen.
Should probably talk about who's going to run the meeting.
Yeah, I'm Jim Boyd, the chairman. Or not the chairman, but the vice chair. And while I was sick most of this year, they appointed Terry to run the meetings, Terry Mannion, so I'd like to ask him to run this one today. And
then also we're talking about at the end of this meeting, we will probably do elections for the officers for 2024.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so next on the agenda is approval of minutes for the special call December 13th, 2023 meeting. Any comments or corrections to the minutes from that meeting? If not, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion. We approve them.
You have a motion? Do you have a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor? It was unanimous. Financial report, this is November and December's combined, so if you turn to the financial reports, I'm just going to hit the highlights again. If you look at the very first sheet, the balance sheet, and go down all the way down at the bottom, you'll see that we have an ending cash balance at the end of the first 6 months of the year of about $121,349. So financially, we're in solid shape there. If you go to the next page, statement of account activities, again, we're halfway through the year, so if you would look at percent of budget, if we were exactly halfway through the year, it should be 50%. And we are at 50%. So from an income standpoint, there's nothing to be concerned about right now there. If you go to the expense, which is the bottom part of that page, the only thing I'm going to pull out, a couple things. First of all, total personnel costs, you can see, are only 42% of budget. Normally, it would be 50%. And we're below budget again because we had budgeted to pick up the health and dental insurance of our staff, and the county has actually stepped in and incorporated them into their plan, and so that's why we are below budget on total personnel. And then if you flip the page over and go to the very bottom, look at total expenses, you can see we're at 40% for the year. Again, if we were on budget, we'd be at 50%, so we're below plan on expenses as well. And again, most of that, about half of that, is due to county picking up the health and dental insurance. So any questions or comments on the financial statements? If not, again, we need a motion.
make a motion, we approve it.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. So the next topic is construction securities. So Michaela, you want to talk to construction securities?
Yes. We've got two on the agenda for today. The first is Jody Sharp Construction Company, Hunt Farm, Section 5. He has asked to renew the letter of credit in amount of $6,493.13. We had reduced this letter of credit previously, and now he's looking for a renewal. It's basically just to finish out some sidewalks in Hunt Farm Section 5. I think he's pretty close to being complete. He just likes to put in the sidewalks after construction is complete so he doesn't wear down the sidewalks. But so just ask for a motion to renew that. We are not at that 3-year window yet, so Planning Commission does have the purview to renew it.
Okay, so we would need a motion then to renew the letter of credit.
I'll make a motion to renew that letter of credit, please.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Tom seconds. All in favor? And Dan. All right, the next security then is the Kelly Griffith Knob View Trace.
Yep, he has completed that project. Junction City has approved and accepted those streets, so he's asking to release that letter of credit at this time.
So again, we need a motion.
I'll move to release the letter of credit.
All in favor to release the letter of credit? Okay, unanimous. Well, now we'll go on to subdivision approvals. There's only two, so we'll take them one at a time. And the first is the Carver Group Incorporated has applied for the subdivision of 1.518 acres of land into 4 tracts located at 0 West Shelby Street, Junction City. Now, the property is zoned R1A, single-family residential.
Sorry, I've got too many papers over here. Yeah, so this is just a subdivision plat to create 4 tracts of land. All 4 tracts are meeting our requirements. As you can see, it's on a state-controlled highway, so they are showing 2 entrances that were created they're proposing in consultation with the state. So it'd be a shared entrance for track 2A and 2B, and then track 2C and 2D. Beyond that, I think we just asked for table of setbacks, and easement and drainage easement certification as part of the TRS review. It did receive preliminary approval. Are there any questions on this one?
During that review, did we forget what about septic or sewer for the
What's
tract? Is septic or sewer on the
It will be sewer, yep.
Okay.
I can have Kendall tell you exactly where it is. I think
No,
it's
it's not
across the
necessary. I just
street.
forgot.
Is that right, Kendall?
The sewer currently is on the east end of the property. On our side of the road, it crosses the road and runs along the north side of the road. We're proposing to, rather than cut the road or bore the road, we're gonna do a sewer line extension along the south side of the road.
Oh.
So we'll actually have sewer on both sides of the road in that area.
Okay.
Each lot will have sewer on the front part of it.
I was just concerned with the odd triangular shape, because without that, it's often hard to get a septic in.
Yeah,
But
for that
it's-
zoning district, it wouldn't be allowed on septic, so.
Okay.
Kendall, may I
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
you a question? These entrances, is there gonna be an access road, or they're just gonna share the?
2 driveways, so there'll be
Just
4
2
lots,
driveways.
4 houses, 2 driveways, and each driveway would be shared by 2 homes. And the highway department has given us, we haven't gotten the official letter of approval from them yet. The district engineer has approved it and sent it on to the state for the final approval. So we initially asked for more entrances, and they said no. So we reduced it to 2.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kendall?
And there is enough room outside of that electric easement to put a house in the corner?
Yes, these homes are spec homes. Jeff Carver, the buyer of the property's here, and we've coordinated with him as far as the floor plan that he plans to build, and it all fits and works. It's one of those planned, engineered projects that we hope works out.
Any other questions of Kendall?
Are they similar to the ones that built at Shelby Green, the small?
They would be larger than
Shotgun
that.
houses,
I think they'd be a little larger than that, but they aren't, they are smaller homes.
Other questions? Thanks, Kendall.
Sure.
So if there are no other questions from the commissioners, then we need a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second, so all in favor? Approved. Okay, the next one is Monty Parman of May and Parman, on behalf of Melissa Granchester, have applied for the subdivision of 119.85 acres of land into 4 tracts located at 10570 Forkland Road in Parksville. The property is zoned agricultural. And I think you have some comments on this, Michaela, because this did go in front of the technical review, and we did not give it preliminary technical review at that time.
Yes, that's correct. This does not have preliminary approval. There was an updated copy that I placed on in front of all of you. They just made some of the changes that were discussed at technical review. You know, some of the minor changes that we asked for just to clean up some of our notes, things like that. So it is technically correct. The two big questions that we had on this plat, I'll kind of give you a brief summary. It is proposing to create 4 tracks. Some of the front area is within the floodplain here. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but you can kind of see those blue dashed lines. So most of the front of those 4 tracks are within the floodplain. There is an existing residence on tract 1. The 2 big questions that came up as part of technical review was tract number 4. It's a smaller lot, 3.25 acres proposed. The majority of that lot is within the floodplain. If you can see that, it's kind of hard to see. So just that front area where I'm putting the laser is outside of the floodplain. I did have a conversation with the health department about this. They went out for a site evaluation yesterday. They do feel that there's an area that they can fit a septic in between the floodplain and the road, basically. So they do feel it's a viable lot. You know, obviously no guarantee until it gets in there, but that was what they concluded from their site evaluation. I know that was a big question. So I do feel that this is probably a viable, buildable lot based on that. That was my big concern. The other question came about with that access easement that's being proposed. So there's essentially an existing gravel drive out there that serves that existing residence. And they're proposing to make this an access easement that would serve tracts 1, 2, and 3. Rich Murphy, the county surveyor, had asked some questions about whether we were allowed to create this access easement unless it was out of necessity. I spoke with Henry about this. I might let Henry more fully explain. I don't believe that's to be the case, but.
I think that we can create easements via plat. You know, there might be a question in some jurisdictions if we can create easements outside of there being an absolute necessity for them, or the other issue might be, can a new lot have its access off of an easement? I think the answers to those questions are, yes, we can create them. That there's nothing in our subregs or in statute that prevents it. And the way that our subregs are currently drafted, I think it's possible that you can approve lots that have their primary access off of an easement. If we wanted to down the road, we could consider a provision that says your primary access has to be off of a public road. I think there's some parts of our subregs that might hint at it, but I think that's a decision that we want to leave up to you all this morning. Can I answer any questions about that?
Run that by me again, if you would, please. I think I understand what you're telling me, but this tract of road that we have for access to 1, 2, and 3 already exists today.
Right.
What you're saying is that even though you have like tract 1 here with a little easement to the main road, and tract 3 doesn't have a direct access to the main road, does it?
It actually does.
They all do.
Okay, so
Yep,
they all do, that's right.
So tract 3, if you see this stretch of land here,
Yes.
because they're all required to have 40 feet of road frontage. Really, it's more just about with the floodplain there, it's essentially a built-out bridge to provide access to those lots. It would be a pretty expensive ask for somebody to build new entrances out there for each of those lots. I think that's why there's interest in creating that access easement, but.
Well, so you're getting, I just wanted to reconfirm, so there is a distinct possibility this existing gravel road that we have on here would be the access for these lots, and nothing would be built on these legs to the main road.
Yes,
There would be no driveway and no access.
yes. I mean, the owner could always choose to do
They
that.
could do that. I'm not saying they
but,
couldn't, but it could very well be nothing.
I would assume it's gonna be financially not, not something that's intriguing to the owner, but especially for track 3, but
Where's the mailbox going to be?
I don't know.
Who makes that decision, I guess?
It's interesting
Usually the
because
post
law
office.
says that they have to, law being the ordinance, says that you have to have 40 feet of road access. So they've done that here.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree.
40 feet of road access.
Right.
To me,
I'm suggesting that that road access position may dictate the address on the box for the property.
That actually is the emergency services tell you what your address is, not the post office. So-
You are, yes, but that's where I'm coming from, is emergency services here, but the access is around the corner. Does that confuse the emergency services situation? Because that's what it's there for, how to get to the property.
They're probably gonna address it off that road, would be my guess. They have a whole set of regulations to determine how they assign addresses. That is not within our purview.
Put all the mailboxes next to each other at that,
At the entrance to the,
at that easement entrance.
yeah.
Now, this is one of those things where I would look at this and I say, I don't know who would want to do that and share that, but lots of people would say, oh, absolutely, I want to share that.
In Kentucky, I've seen it many times.
Right.
It's not,
It's pretty common
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
county, not necessarily this county, but a lot of counties around the state, yeah.
yeah, that's where it comes from. And I don't know, I don't think in our paperwork zoning requirements or anything else, well, it has to do with identification to know that access, which is commonly shared by the 3 tracks, that this is the entrance for those tracks. That has to be well marked. Maybe maybe it is the mailbox number or some other label that's at that area of road, because I have seen that happen in other counties.
Remember, today is one track.
That's correct.
And that road is the road to the house on there.
Yep.
So what they're just saying is, we propose to subdivide it out and let that be the entrance for 3 lots.
Mhm.
Or
Okay.
4. Yeah. Take 3 or 4.
Okay, I'm not having any troubles with what's going on, just trying to make sure I fully understand the impact we're talking about.
Yep.
This is how this ends up being a little more complicated, because potential even for that large tract 3 that's in there is approximately 85 acres. It could easily be divided again.
It couldn't. They're pretty limited on frontage, the way these tracks are laid out. They would have to build a road to standards to be able to subdivide that lot.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I'm not saying it could never happen, but
That
it
is
would,
one of the criteria.
it would take
that
a
would happen.
significant financial investment to do so.
Yeah, to expand that to make it, you're going to have to get to that category of a road that meets this county's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If this right here had been 50 feet instead of 40 feet, then you could foresee some future thinking down the road for that.
okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a confusing one.
What does I have one other item here. The gravel road is partially in the flood zone area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, completely.
I mean,
across the
some of that gravel road is not in the flood zone. If they improve it or renovate it, because it's an existing gravel road, anyway, how does that impact in the flood zone area?
Yeah, so I kind of misspoke at TRS about fill. They basically would have to show some type of engineering study to show that it won't affect floodway if they're to change or bring in fill, anything like that. So I thought it was completely prohibited when I was speaking off the cuff, but I went back and reread, and they can do it. It's just they have to provide documentation that they wouldn't be impacting the floodway if they do that. So,
Yeah, a lot of times the bridge that you might want to develop for that would have to be determining that or be
Yep.
appropriate.
Yep, it would require some engineering
Okay,
study
so
to do
I
so.
just, up front, I want to point out, when you get to the shared road like that, what we're creating is the extra cost and the extra issues to get to that. Okay,
Yep.
all right, thank
Any
you.
other questions or comments from commissioners? If not, then we need a motion either to approve or not, or deny.
And we would need motion for preliminary and final.
Yeah, the motion should encompass both preliminary and final approval.
Director, forgive me, I didn't study the new coffee. You say it's different? Was there any other
Yeah,
difference?
just some minor changes as far as some of the cleanups that we asked for as part of tech review. Just some notes, additional things like that. I can pull out my corrections if you want me to run through them all, but
No,
I
the
did
one
take a look at it.
The one I was looking at had to do with the church, I think. Isn't that in general notes
Um,
on the left corner? Isn't there a church?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Number
there,
4.
Number
the,
4.
the discussion with the church was they're basically creating a property line agreement with this plat. There was some documents that I think had 2 differing indications of where the property line was, so they're basically making an agreement with this plat that this is gonna be the agreed upon property line, so the church is gonna have to sign off on this plat as well. And I think they did add, well, they've already got the property line agreement on there, so.
So the gravel road stays in track 2 area?
As far as where the access easement is?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's technically a part of track 2, but it's designated as an easement to serve tracks 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. There was a lot of detail in this when we talked the other day.
Yes.
Thank you. You've done a great job of clearing it up.
Can we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion for preliminary and final approval of the subdivision.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, Deanne. All in approval? Okay, unanimous. All right, now we will be going into a public hearing. And I believe the first item has been tabled. Do you want to say anything more to that?
Yeah, I believe you have to make a motion to
Table it?
continue it.
Or do you want to say anything before we make a motion? Or-
Yeah, so we did review this site plan amendment. It's for 2 new commercial structures. I'm probably gonna end up having to re-advertise this, but I figure we would just table it just in case. I'll take a look when the new plan comes in. But they are looking out at 3663 and 3773 South Danville bypass for 2 new hotel structures. It sounds like the new plan is probably gonna reduce it to 1, but we'll see what happens when they bring it in. But there were some comments from planning staff and the fire marshal that made it so the proposed site plan amendment wasn't gonna meet regulations, so they've chosen to table it. And I've got documentation to say as much, so it's likely gonna come back at next meeting with a revised plan.
Okay, Commissioner Boyd makes a motion to table it.
And I'd like to second that, please.
Sam seconds it. All in favor? Unanimous. The second item on the public hearing is Gerald and Sharon Nations have applied for a zoning map amendment on the property known as 225 South Buell Street, Perryville, being of 0.538 acres, and the zone change would be from 2-family residential RM2 to central business CB.
Yep. Let me just get to my staff report here, sorry. All right, yeah, so this property is located at 225 South Buell Street. So if you're not familiar, this is Merchants Row here. So it's pretty close to the downtown core of Perryville. As you can see, this isn't the best coloration, but pretty much all the surrounding properties are all zoned central business, aside from this one lot that we're looking at here, which is zoned RM2. I think the history of this is that the property owner at the time didn't want to go through the zone change when all the rest of them were changed to central business, and now the new property owner is interested in pursuing that. So clearly, it's part of a commercial, mixed-use, residential, commercial type of area that we're looking at here. Just a reminder of findings that we look at for a zoning map amendment. It needs to either be in agreement with the comprehensive plan. Absent of that, you either need to find that that the current zoning is inappropriate and the proposed zoning classification is appropriate, or there have been major changes of economic, physical, or social nature within the area that has come about since the comp plan was adopted. I think for this application, I do feel that it's in agreement with the comprehensive plan, but you also could say potentially that the original zoning classification is probably not appropriate just based on surrounding properties and location of the property. So this is a view of the future land use map. They're showing it as mixed-use residential. I'm not gonna read everything that mixed-use residential says, but it's basically saying what we're looking for with a central business zoning district, which gives you the flexibility to do commercial or residential type uses. It's appropriate for more downtown type areas. This is kind of what you see in that area. Obviously with Merchants Row, you're seeing a lot of commercial, but there are some residential and commercial type structures in the vicinity. The current existing structure on the property is more of a residential type feel, but I think the owner intends to maybe use it as more of a mixed-use commercial residential type of structure.
Michaela, if I could ask, is it then your analysis that a flume amendment is not necessary because this matches the future land use map?
Yes,
Okay.
that would be my finding. That with mixed-use residential, I think central business would fit into that. It's basically saying you can go in either a residential or commercial. I don't think highway business might be appropriate for a mixed-use residential, but I think central business, because it is flexible with allowing both residential and commercial type uses, that it would be appropriate. So, and with the nature of the area, like I said. So this is just a boundary survey of the property. Like I said, the existing structure here, it's more of a residential type structure. There is some parking, interesting parking area within the right-of-way coming off 3rd Street there. With central business, we don't have specific parking standards, so the applicant will need to show that depending on what use they're proposing, but clearly there is parking available in that area. Oops, sorry, I guess that's all I've got for this slide. Are there any questions for me on this? I was gonna let the applicant just speak on why they're pursuing the zone change and what their interest is in the property, but are there any questions for me?
Okay, if there are no questions of Michaela, then we'll open the public hearing. Well, first of all, to anybody who would like to testify or in favor of this zone change, if you would please come forward to the podium and state your name. Name and address.
Hello there. I'm Gerald Nations, but I go by Mark, so you can call me Mark. It's fine. And I'm the owner of the property along with my wife Sharon. We're here today. Also, it might be interesting that we've lived in central Kentucky for quite a while, but for a long stint, we moved to the mountains of eastern Kentucky. And so I'm trying to move all of my investments over there this way. And actually, I've bought several properties in Boyle County already. I actually own the property next door now instead of Brandon Miller. So that property is also ours. My son and daughter-in-law bought the short-term vacation rental on Merchants Row. So that's been added, I guess, to the family, but they own that. And I'm still trying to purchase some other properties nearby. And this would give us more flexibility. Obviously, because it's a tourist area, you would want to have the property catered more to that type of a business arrangement. And I am interested in that. It was suggested to me that you tear down the house. I'm not going to do that. It was built in 1924. It's a good old solid structure other than a few repairs, you know. When I first went past the property, you couldn't even see it. It was so overgrown.
Yeah.
And so it's been a massive task to get all that cleaned up, and we're still not finished with it. As far as the actual lot itself. And that's a work in progress. Other than that, you know, we're happy to be in Perryville. Now, we personally live in Harrodsburg, but we also bought a family farm at Junction City. So, any questions for us? glad to entertain any.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to testify or in favor of the zone change? Please come forward. Does anybody want to testify or in opposed to the zone change? Please come forward. Okay, if not, then that will close a public hearing on this particular item. So we're at the point where we need any additional questions from the commissioners or a motion.
I move to change the zone to central business based on two things, both it's in line with the future land use map, and it aligns it with the rest of the zone of the surrounding area.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Do you have anything to add to the motion, Henry? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, just.
I was going to suggest adopting Michaela's analysis. I think what you've stated conforms to that. Motion's fine.
Okay. It was unanimous, so zone change is granted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Good luck.
And we do have one more item on the public hearing, which is the Danville-Boyle County Planning and Zoning Commission has filed an application to amend Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 of the joint zoning ordinance, and Michaela will start us off on that item.
Yep, so I'm pretty much just gonna toss this over to Henry. Henry's been spearheading the amendment for this, but basically, we've been working in conjunction with the city. This has been a conversation that's been ongoing for 6, 7 months, something like that. It's been a long time. We started out with a committee that included Jeff and Steve Griffin, Tom Ty from the DHB, Joni House, who's the staff person for DHB, Stephen Dexter, the city attorney, Henry Earl Coffey, the city manager, and myself. We've kind of dwindled it down basically to the attorneys to get the tail end of this as far as getting the amendments over the finish line, but I think I've spoken to you all that this is something that we're interested in doing. But basically, this amendment is intended to bring the Danville Architectural Heritage Board, the DHB, under planning and zoning, instead of it being under the city. It used to be housed under code enforcement. I think they've reoriented how code enforcement works within the city, so it didn't really have a natural place to be within code enforcement anymore. It seems more in line with what we do with the planning commission. Obviously, we kind of work closely with them. We already had referenced them in the zoning ordinance. We work closely with Joni for anything that's within the historic district. Just to be clear, that's what DHB's authority is over. We have that historic overlay district, so anything within it, they would have to issue a certificate of appropriateness for it, and then historical structures within Danville. So that's the intent of this. Basically, to give you a brief summary, the city's going to be allocating additional funds if this is all approved. So it'd be outside of what our typical request for funding is from the city and county, which we typically have matching. So this is not intended for the county to be paying for this. This is a city-appointed board. It's within the city of Danville currently. We don't have any historic overlay districts within any of the other jurisdictions, so we're not intending for the other jurisdictions to pay for it. It's just the city wanted to see this transition happen, so, assuming everything's approved, that's kind of how it would function. But are there any questions kind of procedurally on this before Henry
Yeah,
goes over it?
Make sure what I don't hear you say, and maybe you did say it and I didn't hear it. What's the responsibility of this particular commission in this?
It's gonna function a lot like the Board of Adjustment does. It's just gonna be a separate board that falls under, I'm gonna be, I'm still gonna be the director, so I'd be in charge of the staffing of it. So Joni is currently the staff person. But as far as you all are concerned, you wouldn't have to appoint the board. You wouldn't be a part of the meetings, anything like that. Like I said, it's just kind of a standalone board that the zoning ordinance is going to be creating instead of it being created from the city codes.
I think
kind of-
any administration of the board, if there were to be a staff change, I think the planning commission might be involved with that.
Involved, yeah.
Budgeting for it.
No,
Yeah.
I'm fine, I'm perfectly fine with
Yeah.
that, just make sure I understand.
Yeah, we
What-
are gonna have to bring the budget through. It's gonna be a part
Yeah.
of our budget, but I'm gonna try and keep it very separate so we can show what funds are gonna be allocated towards it, so it's not going towards county funds, things like that. So you would have some administrative power over it, but,
And appointments to that board will still be managed separately.
yep, that will still be
By the
city
city.
appointments, yep.
So I hear then enforcement would be, I mean, when they're in violation, that's what this board is for, to consider and evaluate those? Okay.
The board hears applications. If violations are brought to their attention, they deal with that. Will Lisa be involved in any of the? I guess the answer is no. It's going to continue to run the way it has, where the staff, Joni House, will send out any notices of violations.
Okay, no, I mean, that's fine. That's a good way to do that one. Do you envision the website that we have modifying to indicate it's part of that?
Yeah, I'll probably have to make some updates to it.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm still trying to learn how to update websites. This is not something I had done
Doing is a
before I
whole
got here,
different-
so.
Yeah, actually doing is a whole different issue.
Yeah, doing the best I
idea.
can, but I'll either add a page for it or I'll link it to the city if they still house it. I'll probably have to have that conversation with them
Okay.
as to how they want to do that.
As I read through the proposed ordinance, I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. If they're going to be underneath P and Z, there'll be a board that's underneath Planning and Zoning Commission. If somebody has an itch to preserve a building in town as architecturally or historically designated to preserve it essentially from being torn down. Anybody that comes to us, we have to refer to, I mean, we have nothing to do with that. That would be that board only.
You're getting a little bit at some of the crux of this move, which is that there can be confusion when a property owner,
Between a zone
right,
and the historical designation.
exactly, and what kind of zoning approvals do I need? What kind of certificate of appropriateness do I need? And the fact of this body being under planning and zoning signals more coordination. I think, for example, when we talk about signs in the historic district, that's been kind of a flashpoint issue. Michaela's talking about having permits that are designated such that it starts with DHB and then gets sent over to zoning, and so that the right hand knows what the left is doing. It's all in the same office. That's a big part of why this move is happening.
And these will be, so I'm trying to foresee something that somebody's gonna try to look for a wedge issue. I really am right now, and those are, I can foresee a couple right away. So somebody will say, hey, this is I wanna preserve this building, okay, we don't want it torn down, but the owner comes back and says, hey, it's per zone, I'm allowed to do this with my
Yep.
building.
Well, so there's two different designations. There's our historic overlay district. I wish Jenny was here. She was hoping to make it. I think it was just a little tight on the time, but there's two separate designations. There's the state historic designation, and then there's the historic overlay district, which is what our regulations pertain to. And that would require a zone change. So we went through that historic overlay district, six, 8 months ago, something like that. DHB, it originates there. They basically hear the initial application if somebody is interested in getting that designation for our local ordinances. But then P and Z would hold the public hearing, and it would follow the normal zone change process. So it's not entirely accurate that we have no involvement in that, because if they are looking at a zone change, if they are looking to come into the historic overlay district, it would go through a normal zoning map
Yeah,
amendment,
that's-
yep.
but My point is that we would still have there's going to be a rub somewhere between the historic designation and the zone designation.
What do you mean?
thinking about this as I'm
Well,
as I'm spitting this out, okay, but help me think through this. I can envision somebody that wants to do something in town, okay? Let's say put up a hotel across the street, okay? And hypothetically, somebody might say that that's not in the historic, or that's in the historic district, okay? That's in the historic district. And it doesn't conform with the historic goals. Okay? I'm just envisioning something that would be a friction point between a board that reports to this commission and then us as commissioners making is that in keeping with the commercial district? Yes. Is it a historical building? No. Can we make it look like it's a historical building? I'm just wondering what are the things that.
We do not have design guidelines for new builds, basically. It's not, it's more of a preservation board than it is a dictating how new builds things. So if a building was torn down, they would have certain requirements as far as setbacks, things like that, that would need to match what was there previously. But as far as them deciding, oh, it needs to have brick on the exterior, it needs to have this, that, and whatever, it would not, Planning Commission wouldn't be involved in that, DHB, we do not have those regulations currently.
Also, the DHB does not get into questions of use. It's
Yeah.
purely structural.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make a problem where one doesn't exist. I'm trying to foresee a problem
Yeah.
that might come up at some point. And you guys are smarter on this than I am by far. I'm just wondering if you see any potential areas of friction that we should be aware of. Not to say that we're not gonna approve this, but just to see if there's any areas of friction that you can foresee.
So the historical board just deals with existing structures that are within the historical district.
Essentially,
Right.
yeah, their goal is to preserve the structure, so if somebody's putting in new windows or doing things like that, they have certain requirements that they have to meet to try and preserve the character of the building, the structural integrity of the building, those types of things. That's what their primary focus is.
We have no
And-
control over their decisions.
No, I believe the appeals would still go through city commission.
That's right. That's the relief valve is the city commission.
But to Tom's point, if somebody was wanting to build a hotel across the street, it's no different than any other developer bringing something to us. We can say that we can have some influence and voice some concerns and some preferences as to how that building be constructed to kind of blend in
Yeah,
with the surrounding. Now, whether we can enforce it or not, but we can request that
Yep.
the developer considers where it's located and how it looks.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah, they would still go through a COA process. Hi, Joni. We're talking about the amendment right now. They would still go through a COA process, certificate of appropriateness if they're within the historic overlay district. So, if it's a new build, like I said, there's not much in way of the design guidelines, so it'd probably be an administrative review in that case, and then it would go through a planning commission just like any other site plan would. But it would still require that COA. Is there anything you want to bring to the forefront, Joni, or just here to listen?
I'm happy to answer any questions. As I understand it, there's no real policy or guideline changes or any
Yep.
administrative changes, the way we do business. They're just simply relocating structure into plans.
Yep.
Yeah, Joni, we were just feeling how that interacts with this particular team and how that's set up and arranged. That's what the broad characteristic of conversation comes in, and whether there's an interference potential.
I don't think, I would not think so. We have to come to you guys regardless to get any substantial changes made. Even like standalone landmarks, I come before you and ask that. So the way it's set up, everything originates with architectural review board, then it comes to you folks, and then you give it your blessing or not, and then it passes to the city, and that doesn't change. Frankly, I think this would probably streamline the situation a little bit. And I can, there's been discussion of outreaching into the counties and helping folks who are interested, tax being able to broaden it a little bit and
Yep.
help out the county folks who are looking for tax credits and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So,
And to be clear, it wouldn't do that with this zoning ordinance amendment.
oh, no.
That's just something, with us being a joint board, that could be conversations that we have with the county and Junction and Perryville, if they have interest in exploring something like this for their community and their jurisdiction. With us being a joint board, I think we could have some input on that. We would probably just end up either expanding the DHB or creating appointments for each jurisdiction. There would be a lot that would have to go into it
There's a lot
to
of
manage
work
that change, but,
that would come through.
yeah. But it wouldn't happen with this.
I wanna impress upon you guys that if someone calls me and asks me, I live out in Danville County and I need help with tax credits, or what can you tell me, please encourage that. I wanna help folks get what they need for their historic structures, they need as much help as they can get, and a lot of them don't know about the programs that are going on. So, that's a freebie on me. I wanna help folks get that program going, so, with themselves. And have the knowledge.
Have you talked with the judge or any magistrates about that?
Joni, I might ask you to go to the mic if that's
Oh,
okay.
I'm
That
sorry.
way we
You're-
can get this on record, sorry.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
I have a big voice, so I can sit in the back of the room. There's some discussion that's went on over the years in Perryville about that. And certainly, Perryville has a National Landmark Historic District.
Sure.
That great battlefield that I could drone on about for 5 hours with you guys. But there is some interest. There's a lot of work there, folks, if you are looking to do stuff. And it's work that needs to be done, and I think people are quite willing to do it. There's grant money sitting there for stuff like that. So there is some interest, but I think people are just kind of kicking tires right now because they don't understand the processes and all the programs. And to be honest, I think once we get settled back with you guys, we really need to aggressively start to pursue getting the knowledge out there for folks, letting them better understand the tax credit programs, maybe get some grants to have some workshops and get that supported, not just in the city, but through the county. Because there's just not a lot of folks who know that process or understand it.
Well, as you said, there's a lot of property in the county. I think they could
Oh.
take advantage of it. and
Sure.
really get it. So, I
You all
agree.
have farms in this county that are 200 years old,
Yeah.
that have been in the same family for 200 years. That's pretty special. And I want folks to understand, I have seen over the last 2 years a massive influx in folks that are speculating on properties and houses and downtown buildings. And it is speculation, and then they are absentee owners, most of them. They come in and buy a business or a building, and that looks great at the outset, because that's what we want. We want to bring business. We want to bring investment into our downtown. But they spend the least amount of money they can. They do it the cheapest possible way they can. They flip the building, and then they leave. And then this is what you've got. So these are the only real protections that you have, and some accountability to folks who are developing in your downtown districts. You know what you want Danville to look like. You know what you're comfortable with and the history of your home. And it is under siege. And I don't think that people realize how much that's happening in Kentucky right now in particular.
John, and Michaela and Henry, for all three of you. Okay, so you just said something that's very interesting. I want to ask a hypothetical question.
Sure.
Is there a role, whose role is it? Is it the city council? Is it the planning and zoning commission to put forth a proposal? All across Italy right now, you have small towns that are dying and lots of speculators that are coming in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there are whole villages that are practically empty, and they're essentially giving away homes,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a requirement that you have to come live there.
Sure.
Okay, you're following now?
Yeah.
Should something like this, I think what you just said is very, very interesting, it's something I haven't thought about. Okay,
Mhm.
speculators coming in from out of state, want to flip a building here in town. Whose role is it not? Who shouldn't? Can we be the ones that propose?
Well, let me tell you.
To say that somebody should live here for a certain
If
period
that
of time?
building, I don't know the answer to that. That would take a lot, I suspect legislation through the city commissions and things of that nature. But I will tell you all that your design guidelines are set.
And they are set in such a way that if someone comes in and buys a building and they start wanting to gut the facade of it and put plastic vinyl windows in it, those design guidelines are set there to say, no, you cannot do this. I want people to understand that it is not a set of design guidelines that wants you to take a building back to 1885. That's 90% of the time, that's very impractical, right? But what those design guidelines say is, look, you can't put the cheapest plastic Pella windows you can get a hold of in that building. It has to be this sort of window that's going to stand up for 50 years, et cetera, et cetera. And that's more what those guidelines are. So that is your first line of protection. I understand there are communities, there's some communities in Louisville that are passing specific community ordinances. They're saying you can't do this in a specific community or you can't do that in a specific community. I suspect that has to be community-driven with your city commissions and things of that nature. I can't speak to that because I'm ignorant on how that process would work. But I do know you all do have a good set of design guidelines, and that's your stopgap to stop that cheap investment. You want the investment. You want someone to invest in that building, but you don't want them to put the cheapest windows they can get into it or plastic soffits on it that are going to fall off of it in 5 years, and they're gone. So there's your building, there it sets. And then the next person has it. So do you understand kind of what I'm saying to you?
It does. The reason I ask this is because in the short time I've been on the commission, we've raised questions about people that buy a property, say that they're gonna maintain a property, okay, because it's not gonna be turned over to the city, okay, and then they leave or they die, and the city ends up having to take it.
Sure.
Because, it hadn't been done. And
Right.
I'm just wondering if there's, this is a hypothetical issue, it's not something that I want to bring up for a vote or anything like that, but whose role is it to say, we would like to think about, we want to welcome people in here, but we want them to stay. Instead of just buy and flip. Is that just a stupid thing to even bring up today?
That's a good, valid point.
Well, you have a good question there, but I don't know the answer to that other than what your architectural design guidelines can stop people from investing cheaply. Now, the rest of it.
I imagine if we just took this straight to the city and said, you guys deal with this, they would probably come back and say, what does planning and zoning think?
I think the regime you're talking about in Italy sounds contingent on the city owning the property, and then you can put covenants and whatever kind of deeds you hand out.
These are essentially abandoned old homes that the cities are now taking.
Right.
And then saying, we'll give them to people, but they've got to come stay, they've got to actually come live here.
Right.
Show that they're willing to do something.
There's an expense to the city in, for instance, like foreclosing on code enforcement liens or something like that. That would be an investment that the city commission would have to decide to make.
Yeah, I don't think we would have jurisdiction over that.
Sorry.
Any other
I
questions?
have a question. So, all of these amendments, I understand that this is helpful to the city, that the city wants to have this occur. What is the advantage of this to the citizens of the city to have this change made?
The phrase that got used a lot during meetings was one-stop shop. I think that's the advantage to the citizens is you're not first going to DHB and then to planning and zoning. It's all in the same place, and the applications are kind of combined such that there's no question of if I get approved by DHB, will I be turned down by planning and zoning?
Yeah, because that's a issue that we have right now is, the design guidelines, let's use signs, for instance, because like Henry said, this has been a big point of contention. The design guidelines do not necessarily match our guidelines, our standards. So somebody could come in, go through that whole process of the DHB, potentially even go to the city for an appeal, get approved, and then they come to planning and zoning, and we have to tell them, hey, you're actually not meeting our standards, so we can't issue you a sign permit, even though you went and got all this approval from the city and whatnot. So I think our intent, Joni and I are gonna have to sit down, but I think we'll probably rework our sign permit application, for instance, and basically just have it be a two-parter with an addendum for the DHB, so if it's in the historic district, Lisa and I would intake it like a normal sign permit. We would then send it to Joni for it to get its approval, but we would get eyes on it first to make sure that they're essentially meeting the eye test of, no, you're not proposing something that's too big or too tall or whatnot, and then we could just go from there. So I think that's the intent, is just try and streamline it, because we do have a lot of overlap. And also, we hope to potentially update some of the design guidelines so it's more in line, so DHB isn't approving something that wouldn't meet ours, but, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. In general, looking at architectural review boards, the standard byline with those are the strictest of the two standards apply. So planning and zoning may have a stricter standard than the architectural review board. And so I don't want to upset people by making them jump through all these hoops and then having to jump through another hoop that they have to, that they may potentially get turned down on. So for us, and I will tell you guys, 70% of the architectural review stuff is signage. It certainly is. And as you well know, it has been a contentious issue, as you've seen what's happened in city commission with the appeals and stuff. So once we get settled, I would like to pursue grant to kind of redo our sign guidelines in the city. If folks in the community want to see a specific type of sign not in their downtown, they're going to need to say so to the city officials. So that's where our next step, I think, would be logically when I come see everybody for grant money this next round.
Yeah.
So
Which, we've already had conversations
Sure.
with the city about that, so if there's matching requirements, it would go through the city, not
Correct.
through us, just to let you all know.
Okay. Any other questions? And I guess we turn it back to Henry to start walking through the document.
Let me give a little bit of
Thank you.
background on it,
Thanks,
and
Jerry.
we can make a decision about how much walking through we want to do. To tell you what you have in front of you, in order to move this board under planning and zoning, the board is authorized by the city's code of ordinances, and the city was interested in reducing that verbiage, but what the code of ordinances provided for was how members are appointed, how hearings are held, where you look for criteria when deciding on applications. And so we decided to move all of that into the zoning ordinance. So for instance, the section on certificates of appropriateness, which talks about those hearings, criteria, appeal rights, we've moved all of that into the zoning ordinance, Article 3, which talks similarly about hearings for zone changes or variances or things that are already within our purview. So the documents you have are our zoning ordinances updated with the shoehorning of DAHB documents. As we've discussed, there's not going to be a lot of change in operation for what the Architectural Heritage Board is doing. It's more just finding a home for a lot of these things, and it's a big code section. I'm happy to talk about any moves or any excisions, but I think that going through it page by page might not be the most fruitful use of our time.
Oh, I was going to suggest that you say, like, anybody have any questions or comments on page 1? Okay. Page 2, page 3.
Certainly.
Or does anybody have any questions or comments that you're going to want to make, or are we ready to accept it as written? Does anybody have any specific comments or questions that you would like to direct to Henry on any of these pages? Okay.
I have two revisions that I want to point out to you, and I'll tell you what they are, and I can point you to where they are. But one of them has to do with design guidelines and when they're changed, who approves them. And here we're going to be updating the language such that any changes to design guidelines go to the city commission only and not to the planning commission and the city commission. That's the way it read previously. And I think that can lead to that could lead to a conflict between what this commission wants and what the city commission wants. So,
Design guidelines is relative to the specific details. Is that what it is?
Those are the criteria about, certain types of buildings, when they're updated, what materials should be used, what it should look like. That's
Yeah, I'm
the
sure-
primary text.
Yeah, I'm sure you have it very well defined, but I think that's exactly what we need to do. And I
Right.
appreciate you looking at that.
So that they don't go to the planning commission anymore. They just go to the city.
Yeah, we're not being judged on that. That's something that the historic board should, that
Right.
group should deal with.
Something else in here is where there was a strike-through, and we're going to remove it. The strike-through would have had the effect of removing certificates of appropriateness for signs, and upon discussion, we're taking that out and leaving it such that signs do have the requirement of getting a certificate of appropriateness under the kind of process that Michaela and Joni have just talked about.
Yeah. And so to be clear, by removing this strike-through, this would keep the process as it currently is.
Right.
Yep.
Any other changes, Henry?
No, sir.
Does anybody have any other questions of Henry? So this is a public hearing, so at this point, I'll open it up to anybody in the audience who would like to come and speak in favor of these proposed changes. Please come to the podium and state your name and address. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak against these proposed changes? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing, and we're looking then for a motion at this point from the commission.
I make a motion we adopt the changes presented.
Okay, Commissioner Boyd made the motion that we adopt the changes as proposed.
Second.
Commissioner Griffith seconds, so all in favor? Opposed? Okay, accepted. All right, next on the agenda is new business, so any report from the advisory committee? Oh, yeah, well,
No, I just wanted to take a brief second to thank Henry. He put quite a bit of time and effort into this
Oh, my gosh.
zoning ordinance
Absolutely.
amendment. This was not an easy task, so I appreciate him doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They've been instrumental in helping. and
Yeah.
Great to work with. I think it's going to be awesome.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Joni. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you soon.
Yep. All right, with that, no, I do not have an advisory committee report.
okay, there's no budget committee report.
Nope. We'll start working on a prelim budget for FY '25 here
Right.
shortly. Hopefully, we get a third member on the budget committee, so,
Today. Any report from the personnel committee?
no.
And then one other new business is the notice of the 2024 pipeline safety program, available training hours.
Yep.
Most of us should have gotten emails on that.
Yep, I apologize. I meant to bring that handout and I forgot. I am lost without Lisa here on meeting days, so
Can you
I
make-
will forward that email out again.
Yeah, I was going to say, you make a point, send it to me again. I've had an email issue.
Yep. So
Same
that's,
email address.
I know you all have been to that. It's a good training opportunity if you need hours. I meant to bring out those two, but I will update. I can have that email sent out and I will send out an update with training hours of who needs them, where we're all at, things like that.
Thank you.
Yep. And, you know, the Bluegrass Hat has opportunities. There's opportunities online to watch videos and things like that. I watched some through the APA. They're free. They're AICP certified, so I think they'd work for the HB 55, that you all can just
And I've
watch live
I've
webinars, things like
watched one or
that.
two, and
So,
they're really nice, yeah, convenient.
yeah, so there's certainly endless opportunities. It's just a matter of finding them. So if you all are in need of hours, just reach out to me and I'll organize something so we can get that
Yeah.
done for you.
It'd be helpful to send that out. I don't remember seeing the email, so.
I may have got
Yeah,
it direct.
okay, I don't get those updates, so I'm gonna have Lisa send it out when she's back in the office,
Okay.
because I didn't see the pipeline training either.
They may
so.
have come directly to me because I went to those training programs in the
Yeah.
past.
Yep, and I think Lisa had been
Yeah.
too,
'Cause I
so,
did not get it either.
Right. Okay.
yeah, so I'll have her send that out for you, sorry. So, in other new business, we have Lyndon Smith here with us. He's from the Bluegrass Area Development District. He is the new planner. He replaced Joe Black. So he's here just to give a brief update on the comprehensive
Yeah.
plan.
Please state your name again.
Thank you for coming.
Yes.
Thank you for having me as a walk-on. My name's Lyndon Smith, And I'm the new planner with the Bluegrass Area Development District, replacing Joe Black. We're working on the Boyle County, Danville Comprehensive Plan update. And what I wanted to do today is just get into your hands the goals and objectives, which have some edits to them. Some came from Joe, some from other sources. But, you know, in order to stay on a timeline here, we wanted to get this in your hands so that you'd be able to look it over, email us any questions, suggestions, anything like that, in order to, you know, keep this ball rolling. The goals and objectives are the one thing that the legislative bodies will have to act upon. So this is sort of our current issue going forward right now. And let me pass these around if you can. I've got plenty of copies. A little about my background. I've been a consultant in city planning, working in central and northern Kentucky, and I've done quite a few comprehensive plans and zoning ordinances and subdivision regulations. And I got to tell you, Boyle County
I
is...
think we're about 3 or 4 short
Okay.
over there.
Somewhere down that way. You're not the first one. Knock it over.
Boyle County is the most problem-free jurisdiction I think I've ever seen in terms of planning, zoning, and development. So a lot of the common issues that other counties would take up, you guys seem to be just sailing right over the Alps with rough spots. So basically where we're at with this is just a first draft, some suggestions. We've got a version that has the markups in it if you're interested in seeing specifically what has been changed so far. What I look for in goals and objectives are the quotable quotes for when you have issues come before you that you have to vote upon, and you need to cite specific elements that occur most frequently in your community. Aspirational things, actually like cluster development. It said, you know, let's study cluster development. As far as I can tell, we've studied cluster development. It's a good thing if somebody presents that. So put accommodations for certain things in your zoning ordinance, and keep the goals and objectives for more pressing issues where the rubber meets the road kind of things. But we'll, you know, keep a discussion going on with this. It doesn't have to be done at monthly meetings, although we can have updates at your monthly meetings. But I just wanted to get the dialogue started as far as ideas that you may have on goals and objectives and the length of time it takes to consider those.
So are we going to add this then to like next month's agenda for us to have a chance to take a look at this and then provide any feedback, or how do you want to handle this? Michaela?
Yeah, I just need to ask Henry if that needs to be advertised as a public hearing, or if it can just be a discussion amongst.
I think a discussion is permissible.
Okay.
You know, without us voting to recommend to send something on, I think discussion is appropriate.
Okay, yeah.
Is this something that we are required by ordinance to have and don't have right now? Or is this something that we are being?
Updating.
Updating.
We're required to update.
It's in our
it.
current comprehensive plan.
That's what I thought. I know,
Yeah.
I mean, this is in our comprehensive
Yeah,
plan.
right.
What's the normal cycle for updating this? And is this just part of that normal cycle?
This is part of the normal cycle, so goals and objectives are a required element as part of Kentucky revised statutes to be included in the comprehensive plan. They are also the only element that's required to be voted on upon by legislative bodies. So this is gonna be recommended by the planning commission, and then each of the legislative bodies is gonna have to adopt these goals and objectives. You all are responsible for adopting the whole comprehensive plan, but as far as the goals and objectives are concerned, legislative bodies have to vote on them.
And
Yep.
what you just gave us, Mr. Smith, is your recommendation?
My first draft, let's call
Okay,
it.
so this is your first draft?
Correct,
Okay, for our comprehensive plan.
correct.
Before we talk about this, I'd like to know what Kayla thinks about this.
But I mean, this is already based on the public hearings and the public
Correct.
meetings that have been
Right.
held and all the stuff that's out there.
Yep.
Yes, there has been quite a few public listening sessions and
Yep, yep.
charrettes, and so there's been a good deal of discussion and input. And you have to understand, for a document like this, you can't just do it in one swing. It's gonna take a little bit of discussion. So really, just email me, you know, if you have an idea, something you'd like to have in there,
Yep.
something you'd like to take out, something you want to change, absolutely, just email me. And, you know, keep that process going so that we don't have to go on in month-by-month jumps with it.
Yeah, and I will review it as well. I'll send my comments to Lyndon. I'm happy to send out my markup if you all care to see it. You don't have to, but if you want me to send that out, I'm happy to. And yeah, I mean, Lyndon just started, what, 2 weeks ago?
Two and a half weeks now,
Yeah, but I just got this document yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I will review it and get
Yeah.
comments back to him, so.
Sometimes the markup gives me a background to stage to better understand the new document.
Yep.
Is what the key, otherwise I'm gonna pull out the book, what I have from the previous one, and try to get to that.
Yeah.
Is what I get to. It's what the changing is now. I think it's a good start.
Yep.
Yes, we do.
You know, so I really like to see what she thinks.
Yes, absolutely. Make use of that. And
Any
welcome,
other-
Lyndon.
Questions or comments then of Lyndon? Welcome.
Thank you.
Will we see you again?
Absolutely, yeah.
Good.
Every month, if that's what you want.
All right, just checking.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you all want, he's offered to come to planning commission each month just to kind of have that discussion on things. So if you all want to see that, we can do that. There's also, Joe Black didn't really have an interest in having a steering committee. Lyndon's more open to the idea, so if that's something that we want to put together, we can have that discussion now. You all can think about it, but it's something that if you all think it's beneficial, want to see it, we could. I think we had appointed Tom and Terry to,
Three or four of us, yeah.
yeah, and then, yeah, I think we had backups of Sam and
Yeah, I was on a backup.
Sam, yeah, I can't recall.
I might have been a
Dan,
backup. Yeah.
okay.
I think Dan, yeah,
yeah.
I had two. I think we had,
So, you know, if that's something that ends up coming together, I think we'll have you all sit in on that or whatnot.
Well, there's a broader steering committee, right, that includes the city and the county, and we were
Yeah.
just members of that committee. Yeah, we were just
Yeah.
members of that.
Yeah, we kind of had an informal steering committee. We hadn't really set monthly meetings, but we could maybe get something on the books, have a recurring
Yeah.
monthly meeting or something, but,
it's easier for me to watch it come in because we're gonna basically be, it's our guidance document.
yep.
So we're gonna live with whatever
Yeah.
gets delivered on the end.
It's a little easier to get it bit by bit than just
It's
have
hard to
the
swallow all
whole,
at once. Yes.
whole document put in
Right.
front of you and trying to get through that, so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would have thought that the city, county, Perryville, Junction City Steering Committee, you know, would certainly be involved in reviewing these.
Yeah,
and-
they will.
Okay.
This, like he said, this is just a very preliminary
Okay,
draft, so he figured he would get in the hands of
right.
you all, but this will be more distributed, it's gonna have more input, and then it's gonna have to go through public hearings and all that, so, yeah. This
Okay.
is in no way final.
any other questions on this topic? Okay, the last item that is not on the agenda, which is elections and then filling out our committees. So Michaela passed out a sheet listing the current positions and who's filling them within the planning commission. And what I was going to do is just kind of quickly run down through those and talk about where the openings currently are. But then we need nominations for openings and volunteers who would like to be on some of the committees. So obviously, we currently have an opening for a chairman. And Jeff was not only the chairman, but he was also on I think he was the chair of the Personnel Committee. And I think in
Yes.
general, the chairman probably is chair of the Personnel Committee.
Yep,
And he was also on the Advisory Committee.
yep.
And so.
And on the Budget Committee.
Yes, he was on the Budget Committee. So we have several committees that have vacancies
Yep.
by Jeff leaving. So in addition to filling the chairman position and perhaps then the vice chairman, we need to have some committees filled out. And we're looking for volunteers, for people who would like to be on some of these committees. And if you're thinking of being on a committee and you'd like to have somebody say a few words about what that committee does, we can do that today. So the first position we have would be the position of chairman. And I guess I would like to nominate Jim Boyd as our prior vice president, vice chairman, to be chairman, if Jim would accept the nomination. And do we want to do the whole slate first? Or do we go position by position?
It's the prerogative of the commission. Slate can be effective unless there's competing interest in positions.
Well, I'd say we get the chairman and vice president, chairman in position, and then we can try to fill out the committees with everybody giving input. So I would nominate Jim as the chairman.
I think you need a second.
Excuse me?
I think you need a second, right?
Yeah, you need a second.
I'd like to do go ahead. And seconds it.
Okay. So all in favor of Jim being our chairman, raise your hand.
Now, I should have asked the question before. Is this for the next season?
This is for 2024.
Okay.
So I think in March, we're going to have to basically have some type of motion that says this is good until next March, but
Okay.
I think you all can just basically make a motion to keep the committee appointments at, everything as is.
Okay.
But we do have to procedurally do that in March.
Okay, that's fine.
And so now we need to entertain nominations for vice chairman.
I nominate Sally, Vice Chair.
I second that.
Wait a minute here. Sally, will you?
Will you accept?
Yeah,
Okay. So we have a,
but surprise.
we have a nomination and a second for Sally to be vice chairman. All in favor? Okay, good. I like when we have the chairman of either the city, the county, and then the vice chairman of the other one. So we always have the two top positions represented by both city and county. Okay, we don't have a secretary, but we do have openings on the technical review committee. Well, I guess we don't. We currently have 4 people on the technical review committee, unless anybody wants to drop off who's currently on it.
Yeah, that's the question. Jim, you've got, in your position going to that, do you want to be on the technical also?
Well, having a background as an engineer.
It is good.
I feel I'm able to contribute there, so
I was just-
I'd like to continue.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the amount of duties
Right.
that's
You're
involved
gonna
with
be
it.
on 2 other committees too.
Yeah, this is where I get concerned, is that how many? And you're welcome.
Yes, Chairman, I'll have some control of how long those meetings go, so.
So we do
I'm willing
currently
to
then
try.
have, do the other members of the technical review committee interested on staying on? That would be Tom and Sam.
I do. I'm
Okay.
fine with staying.
I'd like to stay on.
Okay, so we have 4 members, not saying we can't have 5, but we do have 4 members there. The next is the Personnel Committee, and Jim, Jim, you were currently on that as well as Steve Griffin, and we really need another member. Is there any other person who would like to volunteer to be on the?
I'd be happy to serve on personnel.
Okay, so Sally would then is volunteering to serve on the Personnel Committee. Oh, Budget Review Committee, that's myself, Rita, and Jeff was on that. So we really do need at least one or two more members on the Budget Committee. We meet probably, 3-4 times a year, reviewing both the proposed budgets and then any type of amendments, budget amendments that we may have.
Yep, and I don't know if we meet over the audit as well.
And we also meet, we meet with the audit, so we probably meet 4 or 5 times a year. So anybody else interested on being on the Budget Review Committee? Ken said he is interested. Anybody else interested in being on that committee? There's a lot of numbers, so we can use 4 people.
Yes, there is. That's why I'm glad Terry helps me out with that.
A lot of numbers?
Numbers. Okay, so we have 3 members on that committee, myself, Rita, and Ken.
Did you need another one on that committee?
Do we need what?
And that you do want another one on that?
If somebody's interested,
I'll be glad to do it, but I don't have to. I've got
well,
plenty.
that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so
Put me on.
Sam is
Budget.
also on the advisory committee. Again, Jeff was on that. And it was Jeff, Ann, and Sally.
Yep.
And
What were the big things on the advisory?
So the advisory committee is who I convene if we're making changes to the zoning ordinance. I didn't do it for the DHB amendment because we kind of had a separate committee that Steve and Jeff have been involved in, but typically if I'm bringing other types of recommendations forward, I'd meet with the advisory committee first. So it's really intermittent as far as when we meet. If we're going through a change, we might meet once or twice. If we don't make any changes for the year, we might not meet. So it just kind of depends. Yep.
I'd like to be on it.
Okay, so Jim will take Jeff Baird's place. That gives us 3 members on that committee. Would anybody else like to volunteer to be on that committee if they have meetings, when they have meetings?
I'm willing.
Okay. All right, so Dan is volunteering for that committee.
And Sally, you're okay with that?
Yeah, Sally?
Yes,
Are
I'd
you?
like to stay
Okay. And Ann isn't here, so we'll presume that Ann would like to stay on. And then the Danville Beautification Committee, Sally, you want to say a few words about that?
I have been remiss with not attending, and I'd like to come off.
Okay. Is there anybody interested on being, well, why don't you say a few words about what that involves, how often they meet?
It does not meet very frequently. It often has some routine works that are going on with it. We haven't had any big decisions that have come our way. So,
Does anybody have an interest in being on the Danville Beautification Committee?
It works better if you're part of the city, yes.
I don't know. Yes.
Okay, so Dan,
Put my name on it.
this is really usually a highly contested position. Okay, so Dan, thank you, Dan. And then, I guess, so Steve was you're our
Yeah,
representative then?
you updated that. Sorry, I printed out just the slide of when we last did this because there were no changes aside from subbing me and from Steve and then removing Vince from the beautification committee. So it was just the quickest copy I could find. It was
Okay.
a rush, but.
Okay, well, I think everybody's on at least one committee, and the committees are staffed as we currently speak. So I guess we would need a motion then to accept these as our nominations for the next 2 months, at least till the formal period ends in March. So anything else you'd like to add? Henry, you've got a kind of look on your face.
Do we have to redo this in March, or can we make a motion now? Does the ordinance say that you have to do it by March, or does it say that you have to do it in March? And the reason I'm asking is, can we make the recommendation now that this take us through till March 25?
I think the reason to do it in March is because the way the bylaws talk about it is that your terms run from March. And so that's why we should ratify it again in March.
Okay, we'll do that.
It will just be a very simple motion.
Right.
Yeah.
So do we have a motion to accept the candidates as being proposed?
To accept the slate of candidates
All right,
as agreed today.
A second.
okay, we have a second. All in favor? Okay, opposed? None. So we have a new slate of officers and committee members. Thank you.
Who was that second? Sorry.
What?
Steve.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
Who was on the beautification?
Dan,
By myself.
He didn't say anything, so he's there.
Yeah.
prettiest commercial.
Nobody objected, right? Yeah.
I have a question about the beautification committee, if it is a change in Perryville or Junction City. Does the Danville representative of the beautification committee participate in that, or do we?
Well, is it a Danville beautification committee? So it's Danville. It's a city.
Danville.
Yeah,
And I'm one of the city guys. so.
yeah. It really should be one of the four of us.
I'll just add that if there's any change in interest in any of these committees, it's the prerogative of the chair to make appointments. That can happen anytime.
And each committee then will be electing their own chair next time they meet, or confirming the chair that's already there. All right, that's the last item I have on the agenda, unless, Michaela, if you have anything else.
Nope,
And we'll-
I do not have anything else.
We'll entertain a motion then to adjourn.
I make a motion.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?